Everything's sounding right. I'm getting a slight echo. Is there I don't know, maybe it's just my ears. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't hear it, but let me turn this down just a little bit. See if that helps. Can you still hear
Probably.
me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
So no echo?
Yeah, no echo anymore.
Oh,
Perfect.
perfect.
Awesome, man. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, so for the few unfortunate individuals who may not know who you are, let's give them a quick introduction. Tell us a little bit who you are and maybe something unique about you that people may not know.
Okay. Well, my name's Scott. I sing in a band, Pulley. I'm a dad. Been a husband for a long time. Something about me that people don't know. I'm left-handed, but I brush my teeth with my right hand. It's about a pretty unusual thing. Other than that, the internet, man. What is there not to
I
know?
know. Yeah, I mean, you've got a storied history, man. It's pretty awesome. It's
Yeah.
it's an absolute honor for me to be talking with you. It's fantastic. It's funny because I grew up. You're one of the bands I grew up listening to. You're
Oh,
one of
yeah.
those foundation bands for me, right? Like, Lagwagon, NoFX, MXPX, Pulley, right? Like it's kind of that whole punk era for me as my sister grew up listening to it, and she kind of passed it on to me.
That's a good sister you got.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know.
all the staples right there you just mentioned.
Oh yeah, man. Saves the Day, can't forget them, and Get Up Kids, that whole I mean, there's just a lot of great bands doing that late 90s, early 2000s that was just like I'm glad that a lot of you, including yourselves, are continuing to make great music because it's just kids nowadays need to hear it. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Good.
So I'm curious with the new album. Obviously, when this drops, the album will have been out for 1 week, I believe 1 week, and this is your seventh or eighth studio album.
Seventh. No, eighth.
I mean,
Yeah, eighth. Eighth
okay,
album and a couple of EPs and some compilations, whatnot. But
some,
yeah, our eighth studio album.
I mean that's incredible.
Yeah,
From the first one released in was it 96?
96. Yeah.
Man, what a awesome journey. I watched it was a 2-hour documentary about you guys and kind of the starting phases of the band, obviously kind of the background of who you guys are. I'm curious with life, I'm sure life has obviously changed quite a bit from then to now. Um, it's it's mentioned even in your new stuff that, this is kind of a passion project. This isn't something to make money. This isn't something to be kind of a career path, quote unquote. So tell me a little bit about how music has fit into this whole journey where it was literally not anything to do with money. It was just music.
Well, I think, if you polled any musician that currently plays in a band, they'll all give you the same feedback where when we all started jamming in the garage, learning how to play instruments and learning how to write songs or cover songs. And it was fun. And, your goal was to like get enough songs to go play a party and then maybe play a show. And so, for us, I think that's just kind of what it's always been. And we've really never steered from that model of what it is. And, you know, making it in a band in this particular genre of music or any particular genre of music is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think a lot of musicians, and I can't really speak, obviously, not being one in that position, but I feel like from a perspective that I've had from being on the sidelines watching other bands that we played with, they tend to hate what they do. It becomes not fun anymore. They don't like each other. They don't hang out. It's just not what it was when they all first started. And so, I think by the time we had started this band, we had all been in bands previously for, 10, 12, 15 years up to the point when Pulley started. And I think that was just a conscious effort made was, let's do it this way, regardless of what the outcome is and how tempted it is to take every tour or do everything we possibly can. Let's just keep our feet on the ground and be real about it and not lose why we started doing this in the first place. Because I think the reason Pulley started was we were all in a position where, I don't want to say burnt out, but just kind of started losing a little bit of that love for playing music and writing,
Yeah.
and we wanted to recapture that, and we did, and it's been going on for over 25 years now. So that's kind of, I think, where it's at and where it's been and where it's headed.
That's incredible though, because it is something that I feel like it becomes a job for some people. And I honestly, one of the things that I've loved about your guys' music is it's always stayed true to the roots that you have. Like it in terms of not necessarily the like, I don't know your personal background aside from obviously your baseball career and whatnot, but I mean, like what your first album was at its core in terms of being kind of being a real person, like following your own life and just kind of living life as just a I don't know, there's so much to it, but there's obviously angst and anger there that goes along with the punk rock scene, um but I feel like you guys have remained true to that even as you've aged, and it's been very much a message of like, hey, we're all people, man, especially obviously with the new single that the one that's kind of being touted right now, Lonely. It's like, no, this is we're all humans, we got to just we're all on this journey together. So I would imagine, like, I'm curious for you with the pandemic having been, part of the process while you're writing, how much impact did that have on how you wrote this album?
Just as much as the impact that the world around us has on any given day or time or year. I think that's where we've pulled a lot of our interest from, and a lot of lyrically things that have gone on in our life. And you know, the dark side always tends to pull you in. And I think a lot of songwriters will tell you that you need that spark, that motivation, and a lot of times in this particular style, even though it might sound poppy and catchy and happy, um, there is that angst, there is that anger, and that's what comes out. And the pandemic certainly provided some content, to write about
Mhm.
different things, looking at different, not just one particular thing of a pandemic, but just kind of like how it affected all of us in all different ways, from just being able to go to a grocery store, mental health, how it, just different things that affected different people. And but there's also a ton of other stuff that goes on in the world that kind of helps in that writing process as well. Um, I think the biggest part of the, not probably steering away from your question is it's just helped us personally with guys not having to work and being able to write and spend time in our room and just jam. And that's precious time that you don't normally get when there's five adults who have jobs and families. So it was kind of cool. I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds lame, but it was kind of cool.
No, I mean, it actually makes complete sense, honestly, because it really is like there's something about resets, right? Like I've read a lot and I've tried. I'm not very good at it, but I've tried to do meditation. But like, it's kind of a reset. And the pandemic was almost like a life reset for some people where it was like, hey, I can finally kind of come back to who I am and live in this moment. It was obviously a terrible thing for a lot of in a lot of ways, but it was also really good for that little bit, right? For some people. And for you, when you were, able to come back together and start writing music. Obviously, it hadn't been too long. 2016 was the most recent record, right?
Correct.
And so it hasn't been terribly long that you guys haven't written music or put out music, but um, was there intentions of putting out music again, or was did the pandemic kind of spark that?
There was definitely intention of,
Okay.
we had songs in the can that we were, working on, and I just think it kind of accelerated things a little bit, and didn't really give us an excuse to like say, oh, we'll get to that later. It was like, no, we're going to get to it now, and
Yeah,
that's kind of what we did.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Give me just one second. I'm getting a weird poppy feedback here. I'm going to Gonna pull you out and put you back in, see if it stops it real quick. Give me just a second. All right, you wanna talk real quick?
Hey, 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 can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm getting a weird feedback. Do you mind do you mind trying to call back in? I apologize. This is just
No, no problem.
it's
I
really staticky. It's really
don't want it
strange.
to be annoying. Yeah, I'm gonna call
Yeah,
you
give
right
me
back.
just a second. All right, hopefully you can call back in and it'll work. Make sure we get that all marked, ready to clip. Patiently waiting. All right. It's taking a minute for him to get back in. Wonder what's happened. Let's see. Let's go to settings, guests. Okay, he should be able to jump back in without a problem. He might be trying a different device because that device may have been causing issues. All right. Just living the dream. All righty.
Damn, with the amount of times I'm doing these, I should hook up my condenser mic and do it properly.
Hey, honestly, it sounds perfect now. So we are in the clear.
Good.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was it was
No
just
problem.
like getting a weird feedback. So had to make sure it didn't ruin the whole interview, cuz
Yeah, I hear you.
So with the, obviously you said you had some music lined up, ready to roll. You're like, "Hey, we're definitely going to be putting out music." Has there ever been a time in your what is it? 26 years now where you were like, I'm kind of ready to call it quits on the music?
No, and I think, going back to the earlier question in the beginning is part of the reason why is because of why we started the band in the first place and what's
Mhm.
been keeping it going. So we've never really gotten to that burnt out point, and we've just always enjoyed jamming and writing and playing. And when time allows and the opportunity's there, we're gonna try to take the best and make the most of it.
Heck yeah, man. I friggin' love that mentality cuz it really is so important. Like for you, when you're writing a song and you're putting all your thoughts together and trying to come up with a cohesive album, something that really feels like it's telling a story, telling what you're trying to accomplish. Um, what are some of the main things that you take note of when you're writing a song and things that you're thinking about most often?
Well, I mean, I think it starts with it, we're trying to write a good song. We're trying to have
Mhm.
good music, some good lyrical content, and something that flows together and sounds like a Pulley song. And we probably write, for every song that makes a record, there's probably 5 or 6 songs that don't. And per each song, so there could be 20, 25 songs that just I'm gonna have on my computer that are just, I wouldn't say scrap, but just they don't end up being a song. And
Yeah,
and
they're not up to snuff, huh?
yeah, sometimes, we call them run-on sentences. It's just like a musical riff that's jamming, and it's like, wow, it sounds really good. And then I might sit for a couple days and try to figure out what to sing over it and find a melody. And well, this riff's really good, but it's really nothing you can sing over, so it's probably not going to be a song. And then like for "Lonely," for an example, that song "Lonely" that you mentioned, I'm humming this tune in my head driving in the car, and I can't wait to get home. And I pick my guitar up, and it just within 3 minutes there's a song, and it's very
Mhm.
simple, it's basic, but it's catchy, and everything just happens. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. But I think for the most part, it's we're trying to write a song, and write as many good songs as we can, and that's kind of what gets put together to throw into an album,
Yeah.
a complete record.
Yeah. And I'm curious because I know what I would say on this, but what makes a Pulley song to you? Like, what is it that makes a Pulley song?
Well, being a fan of music my whole life, and maybe this sounds, I don't want to sound selfish, but I think what makes a song for me is, when I hear the voice. And
Mhm.
when I hear the singer, it identifies to me the band, and then, the notes underneath it, and the style, and the kind of the format of the song. And you know, I don't want to say that we haven't gotten creative over the years, because there's a little bit here and there. We throw in some different pieces, but I mean, for the most part, I think you can identify from the first Pulley record you've ever heard. If you're a fan, you can listen to us. Oh, that's a Pulley song, and
Mhm.
you just identify with it. And I don't know if you can say that about every band. You know, I hear a Bad Religion song, and it's a Bad Religion song. I hear a No
Yeah.
Effect song, and it's a No Effect song. I mean, it's just
Goldfinger, yeah.
yeah, it's all the same. So um, to me, that's what kind of identifies with is the playing, the singing, the direction of the songwriting, and how the song's formatted, and the style of it. And you have expectations as a listener what you want to hear, and
Mhm.
hopefully that comes out. You know.
Yeah. And and kind of going back to the topic, I don't wanna beat a dead horse, but, you're talking about, obviously, the freedom of not making this a career gives you a lot more freedom to create more music the way you wanna make it. Do you ever feel a pressure from, like from yourself or from maybe even external forces, saying, "Hey, you've gotta make this song this way because this is what the fans expect," or is it always just, because there's not really expectations there that you just are able to write what you feel like you wanna write?
I think we write what we want to write, and I don't think there's ever been pressure to say, well, we can't play that. It has to be, we have like acoustic songs, we have all kinds of stuff, but we write what we like, and what we like is what the Pulley sound is.
Mhm. That's amazing. And you've obviously had a bit of, a few different band members throughout the history, right? But there are what? Is it the 3 of you that are core members have been there
Um,
from the beginning?
there's been two of us from the beginning.
Okay.
Me and our guitar player Mike. Our bass player Tyler's been for quite a while, and then we've had I don't want to say revolving door, but we've had some different drummers over time.
Mhm.
Four or five different drummers, and we just recently we've had three guitar players in total. The original guitar player passed away.
Yeah, that's sad.
Um, and yeah, and then we got a buddy of ours we had known for years who jammed in the same studio with us. We had been in bands with previously, and his name was Jim, and he played for God probably close to 20 years. And then just recently on this last record, in the last 2 years, we've recruited another longtime friend that we've been in bands with forever, named Trey, and he's been. I mean, it's all family. It's really
Yeah.
we've never had any of these outside people. It's always been people from in within our little world, and so I think that's been a huge part of being able to sustain it as well. Is we're not foreigners to each other. We've known each other for a long time on a friend level.
Yeah.
So jamming's made it kind of fun as well.
It seems like that community that you guys are in, that kinda punk, skate punk world, seems pretty small and pretty tight knit between all of the different bands and stuff. Is that pretty accurate?
I'd say it's accurate. There's a lot of bands within our scene that if we play a show and we're backstage, it could be 5 6 years that we haven't seen these people, but we're still around,
Yeah.
and we all know each other. So, we probably don't pound the pavement as much as a lot of the bands do, but enough to stay relevant and keep those friendships. But yeah, you're right. It's definitely not a huge scene. It's a pretty smaller, tight knit community.
Yeah. And, through your time, obviously, like you said, you know, because you've had obviously if people don't know, the professional baseball career, you were, this wasn't your full-time gig. You were a coach as well, right? You coached pitching as well. Um, so for you, I'd imagine the tours were probably, when they came, it was probably a pretty big deal. Um, was like for you, what were some of like your favorite tour memories that you have?
Well, we spent a lot of time going to Europe. I mean, I was on an 8 month tour in the United States with the baseball thing every year for
Yeah.
35 years. So we had opportunity to go to Europe or South America and Canada, and not to discredit the United States, but we just had the opportunity to go on. We basically looked at them as vacations. The other guys had
Yeah.
full-time jobs as well. So it was kind of a relief for all of us to be able to just get in a van in some foreign country with a bunch of maps we didn't know how to read and just go for it and meet all different people, and it went over really well. And I think that's why we continued to keep doing that on an annual basis. So we looked forward to it, and we enjoyed touring, and it's always a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, those European countries and Canada, they're lucky enough to have you coming through right, within the next couple weeks. Us here in the US, we're not as fortunate.
It's just been hard. I mean, I wish we could, but we're not in that so-called clique, where
Yeah.
just didn't really go over for us, I guess.
Yeah. That's interesting. What like when you say it didn't go over, is it just kind of like that the people in Europe and Canada, like the scene is bigger? What is it that like that's different?
I think, here in the States, I think we could be a good direct support band for a bigger band, a Pennywise type band, or some of these other
Mhm.
bands that, the Bouncing Souls, or other bands that go out and can headline. But for whatever reason, we don't ever, those tours aren't ever offered to us. We don't ever get that opportunity to go out and play in our own country. Uh, I don't think we would have a successful tour on our own. We're not that level of a band. We could play some smaller clubs, but even that might be sketchy on a Wednesday night. Uh, so for us to get the precious time and the opportunity to go do something, I think, if we're going to go do 3 weeks somewhere, we want to try to make sure that 2.5 of them are going to be worth our while and pretty good. And I mean, there's nothing more than I would love to have gone to Boston and New York and Philadelphia and played these places on a regular basis. But like I said, we've never been offered that opportunity by other bands to help us along. And that's kind of what we need to go out and tour the States.
That makes sense. And I am curious with obviously your baseball career was overlapping all through the 90s into the 2000s, right? With Pulley?
Well, my baseball career has been going on since 1986. Uh,
86. Okay.
yeah, so long before I was in a band called 10 Foot Pole, long before any of that stuff ever even happened. So it's basically been overlapping the entire time I've been playing music, other than, my high school days. And then I
Okay.
was I was playing baseball in high school as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been hand in hand the whole way.
And was that like for you, was the band a nice release to kind of like take your mind, because I'd imagine obviously professional sports, like I love sports. I'm not terribly athletic, but I love sports. And I'd imagine that it's very grueling to be an athlete. And
It's
so
an, yeah, it's an insane grind.
and I mean, especially baseball, what is it? 100 and something games a year.
Well, it's 162, but that's just the season. You got 30 games in spring training, and you're there a couple weeks before the game start. It's over 200 days a year. You're
Plus,
living on.
then hopefully you make it to the postseason and you're in there too.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a bonus, but just what is on your schedule is going to be it's going to be a solid 8.5 months every year, living out of a suitcase.
Oh, sounds brutal. How did
I
you
mean, it is what it is.
but it's also like it's a huge blessing because very few people are able to make it to that level, which is really incredible. But it also is like, like, I guess for me, from my perspective, I'm like, I've got 2 sons and I've got my wife, and I was like, I don't know, that would be a really tough life. So that's where I come from, right, in my
Oh
head.
yeah. Yeah.
And you said you've been married for quite a while. Were you married during your baseball years, or were you single during that time?
I've been going on 30 years of being married. So I played a couple of years in the minor leagues and then a couple of years in the major leagues before I got married. But yeah, you got to have a supportive family, that's for sure. And my wife's been a trooper. I mean, my family's been out. They've seen the entire, they've seen the country times 10. And, we've been to every major city, every little podunk town, every minor league ballpark and major league ballpark there is, in this country to offer. And, my kids have grown up around that. And I don't, I think when they were younger, packing up and going for the summer, when they get out of school, it was fun for them. And as they got older, it was a little tougher. But my wife was like, "This is what we're doing,"
Yeah.
and they didn't really have a choice. And then I was fortunate to towards the end to start working close to home. So for me, it was like I was just commuting to work, and then oh, we're going to go on a trip for 5 days or 7 days. Not so much of a big deal when you get to come home. But yeah, it wears on you for sure, and it's a lot of work. And like I said, I owe it all to them because they allowed me to continue and to pursue that and to be able to enjoy it and not feel guilty about what I was doing.
I mean, that's fantastic. And for that balance, you've got 3 major things in your life at that point then. You've got, music, obviously, with 10-foot pole, you left due to not wanting to be a full-time musician. You had, obviously, your baseball career. Um
I was asked to leave. I don't like to
Oh,
sit pound that nail, but I didn't leave on my own. But I'm glad that I was asked to leave because the next day we started Pulley and we're still going.
heck
So
yeah. I mean, honestly, like, it's funny because I was like, "I've heard of that band 10-foot pole," but I knew who Pulley was, so I'm grateful too,
yeah,
because it worked out
awesome.
great for my music listening.
Good.
Um, but you had obviously those 3 major things in life: baseball, family, and music. How did you find balance? How did you balance everything?
Well, it's all I've ever known. So
Valid?
I mean, I really, that's a tough question to answer because my whole life, this is all I've done. And I don't know how to phrase it any differently other than being extremely grateful and thankful that I've never had to have a job, a real job. And I've been able to live this kind of so-called fantasy and um, it's just who I am.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, that's a great way of putting it though, because I guess when that's all you know, you don't really think about it, right? It's just kinda like, this is my life. This is how it is. That's and
I never got to go to work, come home, eat dinner with my family, play with my kids on the weekends. I mean, I did, but it wasn't like an every single month, every week, every day type thing. And
yeah,
and I've just this is what it's been. So
yeah,
this is how my family's grown, and we're close, and I think we're a lot closer because of it. And you know, we've had a home in California forever, but it's kind of cool when you pack up and you go away for the summer and you're in this little apartment with five of us and we're in this little two-bedroom apartment and in a different city, and it's just it made things, it was cool. It was a good experience. I'd like to think it was a good experience for my kids growing up for sure. And don't get me wrong, when I'm home I definitely made up for it. I don't think you have to
absolutely.
be, as a parent, you don't have to be present. It's who you are when you are there. And I made sure that when I was there, they didn't feel like they didn't have a dad when I was gone.
Yeah. I
And
mean, that right there is parenting advice for the ages. That's exactly what it is. It's the fact is, like, I have to work, I have to be away from home, but the moment I am home, my kids know that they have dad. They have me, and that's so valuable, and the fact that you did that, made that a priority, obviously sings volumes about who you are as a person, but also, like, where your values lie, and, as you've had this career and your kids have grown up in the midst of this whole career, are your kids more on the punk rock side or more on the baseball side?
well, I have two daughters and a son, and
Okay.
I don't think they ever really got into the music. Um, it just kind
Dang
of
it,
was like
man.
kind of there. My son, my son, maybe a little bit. I was joking with someone the other day. Like I heard Fugazi in his room. He shaved his head, bleached his hair blonde. He's not some punk kid, but I know that he likes music, and he's a little more open than the girls were. You know, they're growing up in the whole Demi Lovato and all that kind of stuff. You know, um, which was cool. And I supported that. I took my daughter to see Hillary Duff or whatever her name is. You know, but yeah, they just kind of knew it was something that I did, and I go, oh yeah, my dad's in this band, and that's kind of the way they saw it.
Oh,
Yeah.
man, I was really hoping for a little glimpse of hope because, I'll turn on my music and my kids are like, "Dad, can you turn on something I would actually like?" I'm like, "You should like this. This is MXPX," or you know what I mean? I'm like, "Come on, guys."
Hey, believe me, I tried, man. I
Oh,
tried, and when they were in the car, they didn't have a choice. That's what they had to deal with, and
I I do force it too. I mean, it's
yeah.
like, "Hey, I'm driving, I choose."
I mean, you're not playing like I'm not playing like the stuff I listened to when I was a kid, like the old early '80s hardcore. I mean, it's a little like you said, MXPX. It's a little more. It's musical. It's like it's
Yeah.
not bad. You guys can deal with it for the 30 minutes it's going to take to get to your grandma's house. You know.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. It's like I try to do dance parties at the end of the night, and I'll turn on punk rock. I'm like, "This is so much," and they're just like, and then I turn on Marshmello, and they're like, "What?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Man, dang it." But I was hoping that, I was hoping that you'd give me that glimmer of hope that I could just expect them to be punk rock fans too, you know?
You never know. Like I said, my son's 19, and he's playing Fugazi, he's playing the Descendants, playing Misfits, and it's like, all right, he messes around on the guitar. It's like, I think he's got a little bit in there, but he's got a wider variety of music than I do.
Mhm.
I listen to a lot, but not to the extent that they do.
It's
You
funny
know,
that that older music is coming back again, like that early '90s, skate punk, even late '80s punk is coming back. Do you like, did you ever ask
wait
your
a
son,
second,
like,
wait, where'd it go? Did it disappear?
it kinda did, right? It kinda like, even now, like, I'm a huge punk rock fan in general, and so, like, my high school years, it was the pop punk phase, right? Like, you had the Yellow Cards, the Simple Plans, the Good Charlottes, all of those more mainstream punk rock bands,
Right.
Blink-182 as well, and, and then it just, like, instantly just cut off. It just, like, disappeared. And now it's coming back thanks to Travis Barker, I think, obviously, and making pop punk a little bit more mainstream again. And I'm like, man, a lot of these bands that I loved, I forgot about them sadly. And then I realized, wait, they never stopped making music. I just stopped listening because I kind of followed the trends of whatever was going on. And did that, like, for you, as you're making music, continuing to pump out awesome stuff after awesome stuff, is there ever a time where you're like, you're looking at the scene and things go slow for you and then pick back up, or has it been pretty consistent throughout the whole journey?
Like when I first started playing music in the early 80s, it was thriving. Hardcore was thriving, especially in LA area here, and it was starting to get out into the suburbs, and the younger kids like myself were shaving our heads, and then we started kind of getting into skateboarding, and the surf culture scenes out by the beach were developing their own style of music, but hardcore was thriving. And then in the late 80s, it kind of started to die a little bit, and you wondered like, wow, is punk dying out? And then, I'm sure you've heard this by other people. Bad Religion put out uh, Suffer,
Mhm.
and it just kind of Suffer and No Control, and it just seemed like, okay, there's a new direction now here of the same punk rock music, but it's getting better. It's more melodic, and that was a revival for sure. And having once that happened for me, I don't know if I ever. I mean, obviously, it's slowed down to an extent where we'd go to shows, and there might be 100 people instead of 300 people, or
Mhm.
something like that. But there was still always that core of people that were into it, and then there was the people like you're mentioning, like yourself, who kind of got into like. I remember we played a show with Yellow Card. They came out to this area and they were living out here, and we played a show at this place called the Ventura Theater, and it
Mhm.
was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and it kind of hit me on this particular night. Um, we headlined, and there was about 450 people there, and it was pretty good. A Yellow Card played, and then there was like 150 people there for our set. We were like, oh shit, man, this is, we're, and that kind of made me realize, like, well, they're just not into us, but they were just, that was getting really popular at the time, and
Mhm.
that's just the way it was. But I don't know if it's ever really slowed down in my mind. I think it's always been there because these bands have continued to put out records, and they've continued to play live and write songs, and maybe the crowds have diminished a little bit and then kind of gone within phases, but that's like anything.
Yeah.
Everything kind of has its cycles. Bell bottoms were popular in the 60s again. Um, I'm still waiting for, like, there was a period in time in the 90s when skaters had these huge baggy clothes, and then everybody went to skinny jeans, and now they're kind of out of the skinny jean phase. And who knows, man?
Yeah.
Music's like fashion. It kind of comes and goes in waves, but I think the ones that are real passionate about what they do, it's always going to remain there, and the music's always going to be played and written. You know?
Yeah, that's exactly I mean, yeah, eventually, I think Gene Code jeans actually are back now. I don't know how, but
Yeah,
but I know that the middle part is back, the bowl cut middle part.
that's weird. See, that's weird for me. I haven't seen that since high school.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to look back, like, look at these kids, like, I'm realizing, like, oh, I'm at the boomer stage now. I'm getting old. I'm getting to this point where I'm like, I still wear skinny jeans in my Vans. Just don't bother me. This is
Yeah,
what I wear.
yeah.
And for you, like, I'd imagine it was a little bit different, obviously coming at music from the angle that you did, where it was more of the side project passion of things. Um, when you were, putting out music, that first record, um, what were your expectations when you first started, and, like, with Pulley? Because I guess obviously 10-foot pole is a different project, but with Pulley, when you put out that first record, was there any expectations, or was it all just like, hey, we love what we're doing, let's just put this out there and have fun?
Well, it was, let's put this out there, and we love what we're doing, and we're going to have fun. I mean, that this when I so I'll give you a little backstory. So I'd been playing with the guys in 10-foot pole. We all went to school together. We've been playing for like 10, 12 years, and our break came and we put out a record on Epitaph. It was called Rev. It did really well. The scene started booming. The Offspring was selling records. Pennywise was selling records, and that particular scene was starting to get popular. Music was being played on these surf videos, snowboard videos, and it's like, wow, this is kind of happening. And then I was asked to leave. So I picked up the phone, and the first guy I called was the guitar player, Mike. And I said, hey, want to start a band, want to have fun. I want it to be about having fun, because my experience with 10-foot pole was fun until things kind of started getting popular. And
Mhm.
then, I don't want to say it was ego, but it was like, wow, we can make it now. And they lost sight of why we were jamming for the previous 10, 12 years in the first place. So I didn't necessarily fall into that trap, probably because of my schedule, and knew that the reality was I'll never be able to do that full
Mhm.
time like that. So go ahead and live your dream, and I'm going to get some friends and start a band together that we're going to continue to have fun. Expectations, 100% there was expectations to write good music and put out records. And Brett from Epitaph basically signed us unheard and said,
Wow.
put together some songs. And he said, you know, and we'll record them. So we did actually do like a short demo of two or three songs. I sent it to him, and he's like, "Yeah, that's cool. Go in the studio and record an album." And he goes, and he said flat out, he goes, "You guys don't really have to worry about touring. You just have to put out good songs and good records, and they'll sell. People will want to hear the music if it's good." And I think the days of touring, I don't know if you have to go out. It's a bonus to be able to go out and play your songs live, and you win over fans. But I don't think necessarily you have to release a record and go out and play live anymore with the ability to access music. And if word of mouth gets around and people like something, they're going to listen to it.
Yeah.
And if they are coming to town, not all those people go to shows. And I've learned that kind of the hard way. And I've learned that, you know, I've had those experiences where, oh, we got to go out and tour. We got to go out and tour on this record. And we've done it. And it was no better than it was before the record was out. So, or no worse, one of the two,
Yeah. Yeah.
Either way, the expectations were write good songs, put out a good product, and set the bar here so that everything that comes after it has to stay at that level. And
Yeah.
those have been our expectations.
And that makes complete sense. I like that they're, like, obviously, I'd imagine the rep from Epitaph, he already obviously signed 10-foot pole knowing what you were capable of and what your songwriting style was, and is that why he kind of just like, all right, dude, let's make some music together? Is that why he was willing to sign you guys right off the rip?
I think so. I think that had a lot to do with it. The success we had with the previous release. I was like, yeah, let's go for it. And I think there was a lot of faith and trust there, and knew that we were capable of doing something like that. And I'd hopefully like to think we did. I mean, we were fortunate enough to be able to put out 5 records there, and to me, that's still to this day the best punk rock record label there is.
Oh yeah. I mean, even now with what they're doing, they're always kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to what the um counterculture music is. They're very much attuned to kind of like putting out counterculture music, as Epitaph Records is. I think they've done that for years and years and years now, because there's a few different record labels that have just done really great work. I don't know anything about Vagrant anymore, but Vagrant Records back in the day, Epitaph Records back in the day, Geffen Records back in the day, that was kind of like the record labels that I would look to for like good music. And that's how I knew about you guys, was through one of the, I think Epitaph did one of those sample CDs
Yeah,
where
they did
like,
Punk-a-Rama, 10 of them.
yeah, yeah. So it was one of those is where I heard you guys for the first time, and I was like, sold.
And they had the best bands. I mean, they had Rancid, they had Pennywise, they had No Effects, they had these bands that like the Offspring. So being able to ride some of those coattails is like, I think as fans, we were on those compilations with those bands. We were like, people would give it a listen because, well, I like this band and I like that band, and hitting on what you said a little bit. I think that I'm not a fan of all the stuff they put out nowadays. I'm not going to lie, but you're right. They are ahead of the curve because they have to. Music evolves, and in
Mm,
order to stay relevant and stay up to speed, and that's the one thing I have respected about them is they weren't afraid to take a chance and put out some. I mean, they just signed the Linda Lindas. I mean, things like that.
yeah,
That like then they started a little subsidiary label that had Hank Williams III and a lot of these old blues guys, and it's you know what you're going to get, or you knew what you were going to get at a certain time. Now I don't think you could just pick up an Epitaph record and assume you're going to get the next Offspring album, because it's not going to happen, or
yeah.
the next Pennywise. But they are broadening their audience and reaching out to a lot different variety of people, and making their label still survive, and they're still surviving.
Yeah. I mean, it is really, it kind of goes back to the same thing with, even with what you're doing. They're doing something that's in their DNA almost, right? What you've done as a musician, as a band, it's like you're creating stuff that's true to who you are, and Epitaph is staying true to who they are as kind of counterculture slash like music revolutionaries, I guess, when it comes to that new genre, that new up and coming generation. They're not looking for the next necessary, TikTok hit. They're looking for something that really speaks to a generation, like what you guys did, especially with your first few records. Like, there was a lot of things in there that just were like speaking to that, not just you guys, but that whole entire era of that 90s punk rock. It really spoke to a lot of kids, and those kids are now adults, and they're like, that's shaped a lot of our dialogue, right, in the world,
Hmm.
because of stuff like what you guys have done. And when you look back on your 26 years as Pulley, and hopefully many more years to come, and you reflect, like, do you ever think about the impact you've had, or like the reach you've had, or is that just something you never consider?
The only time that it really comes to light is when people make you aware of it, to be honest with you. Because I don't know if you set out as a band to try to change the world or make this. I mean, some bands probably do. They have this aspiration. We're going to make, we're going to make it huge and you're going to change the world. But like I said, we just wanted to write good songs, and there's been a lot of genuine moments along the way where people have hit us up at shows. Each one of us as individuals separately, and just told us how, like, it got them through a tough time, or it really changed this particular moment in their life, and that's pretty humbling when that's when you really kind of take a step back and you go, wow. But that's not why you do it or how you set out to go about it. It's just,
Yeah.
it's very humbling and gratifying and honoring to have a human being genuinely look you in the eye and tell you how important this was to them, and how you would say spoke to them. And I mean, that's like the greatest compliment in the world.
Yeah, because like I said, when Mike was like, "Yeah, let's get this set up," I was instantly like, kind of like, giddy schoolgirl type thing, right? Where I was like, these guys have like, this was such a band that I listened to for years and years, and so it's like this idea to me that I can, have you on the podcast. It was just this funny idea, and I was like, I wonder if he ever thinks about that, like what other people think when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. And real quick, I don't want to take too much more of your time. Do you have just a few more minutes?
I got nothing but time, man.
All right. I am obviously with the new record. I've listened through it a couple times, and I'm lucky enough to have gotten the early release. And I think my favorite song on the record, I really enjoy "Wake Up" a lot. And I think it was, yeah, and "The Golden Life." So obviously you're the title track of the album. But for you, when you look on this album, what are some of the highlights from this album for you individually?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I'm attached to every song. Obviously, um, there's some songs that I feel are probably a little stronger. Like you mentioned, "Wake Up." You're the first person that I've ever heard say that. And that's the beauty of it, is how things hit different people different ways. And if you
Mhm,
ask each member in the band, like, well, what do you think the best song is? We'll give you five different answers.
mhm.
So I know that collectively there's three songs we've been playing live, and I always feel like if you see a band live, usually the songs that are in the set for the most part are the songs that they're behind 100%,
Yeah,
and not that they're not behind the other songs, but they just feel that those are probably stronger songs to play live. And I like the opening track. I like the song "Second Wind." I like "Lonely." um, I like the song you were playing earlier, "Align the Planets." I think there's like I said, I'm attached to all of them, and
mhm.
I personally, I enjoy most of them. But um, like I said, the few that we're playing live, there's a reason why, and I don't know what that is, but there's just a reason why we're playing them live, and we want people to hear them.
Yeah. I mean, that makes complete sense to me. Maybe this is actually kind of a unique position that you have where you haven't toured as much. You've obviously toured quite a bit and supported your albums a bunch. Um, but you don't like, have you gotten burnt out on any of the songs where you just kind of feel like you outgrew any of your songs at all? Or is it, do you feel like you kind of stopped playing some of them or stopped listening to some of the songs that you've written?
I wouldn't say stop listening to them. There's songs that we've never played live that I really like a lot, that I think, man, these are good songs. But for whatever reason, the songs that we play live are the songs that we can get through a set with and not have people just kind of standing there and staring at us. Um, and songs that maybe I've gotten burnt out on, or maybe taken a different outlook towards, are songs that I was all hyped on to play, and then we'd play them for 5, 6, 7 shows, and you could just tell, like, man, this just isn't going over well. And
Mhm.
and I learned a long time ago, what I think's cool probably isn't cool. And, you know, so I'm okay with that, and I'm not going to force something down anybody's throat. So we use the audience as the sounding board and the feedback to, their reaction is like what goes over well. And sometimes, we're playing songs that I might not like, but they go over the best.
Okay.
Or and for a personal note, it's probably struggling like, well, can I hit that note today? Because when I sing 3, 4, 5 days in a row, it gets a little tough.
Yeah.
And it's like, God, I don't look forward to playing that song on the set, but I know it's going to be a good one. But I like all the songs. I mean, I really do. And I wouldn't say I've ever gotten burnt on them, but I think, like I said, that it's the fans that kind of tell you what they want to hear.
Yeah. Which song has the best reception when you play it?
Cashed In still to this day, probably our first song that on
Yeah.
the first record still has it's pretty well received, goes over well.
I
Depending
love
on
that song so much.
Oh, good, cool, man. It just depends on where we're at and the setting we're in, and it's like the bill we're on with the band. It's like if we're playing with a band that's kind of the same style as us, we can probably play almost anything that we have. If we're paired up with a band like JFA or some kind of older school band, they just want to hear fast music. They don't want to hear, polished, poppy, singing melodic type sound. They want to hear just in your face screaming. So um, it just depends where we're at and how it goes over. If it's a true Pulley crowd, we can play anything,
Yeah.
and that's always fun. But that doesn't happen very often.
Well, it is interesting because I feel like the crowds nowadays, when you're playing a show, I'll bet the crowds are a lot older, so the energy might be a little different than it was back in the day.
Yes, for sure. Like as far as the movement and stuff, and we did a thing. I don't know what year it was. Might have been two. When did the pandemic start? In 2020.
Yeah, March of
So
2020.
So in 2021, we played this parking lot gig, and it was like a drive-in show where everybody had to sit in their little isolated spot.
Uh-huh.
But it was cool, man. It was like people were far away from us. Obviously, there was nobody up close. There was no. I was cool with it. It was great. It was just different. It was fun, and it sucks when you're in a small club and the people are right in your face, and they're just not into it.
Yeah.
Um, but the older people, whether they're just standing there or not, you can feel the energy, man. You can see their heads are still moving. They're still maybe mouthing a few words here and there, and they're definitely appreciative when the song's over. So that energy is huge, and
Yeah.
we don't necessarily need to have people diving off stage to make us feel good.
Yeah.
As long as people are receiving, if they don't leave the room, then they're into it. That's the way I see it. They didn't turn their backs on us and walk away.
Yeah. Yeah, I've found myself at shows just kinda, like, in the corner. I'm like, "I hope this band knows that I really, really enjoy this show, but I'm not jumping around, I'm not going crazy," you know?
I, I've been in the back of the room watching shows for the last 30 years. It's,
Yeah, you're in one of those
but
lucky positions, though. You're expected to be in the back of the room watching the show.
I want to show my appreciation to a band. I don't want to just stand on the side of the stage and be that, band snob guy, you
What
know.
was the coolest show you were at? Like, the coolest bill that you were a part of?
We did some shows on that first record with Propaganda up in Eastern Canada that was just amazing. They
That
were some
band
of
is yeah, they are way underrated.
the, they were a three-piece at the time, and I just remember, I don't even know if their second record had been put out yet, but they were playing songs on it, and they had just gotten their new bass player, the current guy they have now, and I just remember listening, going, "There's no way in the world that three guys can sound this good." It sounded like an orchestra, and they
That's
they
awesome.
sounded just like their records, and it was so tight and so good. And we were in an area of Canada where they were obviously well received, and their whole what they stand for, their whole thing was just awesome, man. It
Mhm.
was those stretch of shows we played with them were pretty. They left an imprint for me for sure. I enjoyed that a lot. I wish all shows could be like that.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
cool, man. And yeah, because 'cause I've always thought about that where I go to a show as a spectator watching, and I always wonder, what about the bands that are like touring with these other bands? There's always usually mutual respect, but like it would be really cool if you're actually a fan of a band and you're touring with them. That's and
Oh,
obviously what they did. Yeah, that's
it's
so cool. That's so cool. And
mhm.
I'm also wondering when you obviously said you played music for quite a while, uh, and you overlapped with baseball the whole time. Which one was more nerve-wracking? Going up on stage and performing or being out there on the mound and pitching?
Definitely holding a microphone in your hand. You know, when you're fronting a band, it's you know, there's I don't want to say pressure, but there's a lot. If I'm sick, if I've got a cold, if something's not right with me, it ruins my whole day. If I was a
Mhm.
drummer or a guitar player, you might be able to like battle through it, and it doesn't get unless you smash your hand or something. It doesn't. You can't tell as much. I don't want to embarrass the band, and if I crack up or if I can't hit a note or if I've learned obviously how to pull off certain things, live. Um, that I couldn't do on a consistent basis. But it's hard in between songs when the musicians turn their backs to tune their guitars and you're kind of standing there with a microphone in your hand. Everybody's staring at you, and I'm not a comedian. I'm not. I don't. Now, certain nights it's easier, but it's for the most part it's always been music for sure that's been more of a challenge than playing in front of people or pitching.
Interesting. I mean, that's funny because that surprises me. Because obviously as a relief pitcher, typically you're gonna be put in kind of a sticky situation at times. You're gonna have to kind of help out the team, but the fact that you're kind of always at the front of the things with being the band, that makes sense. That surprises me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, real quick, I always like to end my podcast with just random, nothing to do with music questions. So if you still have just a couple more minutes,
Plenty of time.
awesome. All right. So this first one is because I am a sugarholic and I eat way too much candy. Um, so I'm just curious, what's your favorite candy and or dessert, if any?
I like all kinds of candy. The real sugary ones like the chewy sweet tarts or something. I'm not a big
Mhm.
sour guy, but I've always liked chocolate candy too. I love candy.
Me too. So the chewy sweet tarts is kind of your go-to though.
Uh, no, I wouldn't say it's my go-to, but like when you said sugary, that was the first thing that popped in my head. Oh, those
I,
chewy sweet tarts.
oh, those things are great.
Yeah.
I can definitely get on board with that. All right, next one. Sometimes it's hard to come up with your number one, so I'll accept your top three on this one. But favorite movie?
Favorite movies. Wow. Do I have time here or is the clock ticking?
Oh, no time. Yeah, no
Um,
time limit at all. You are ready to
I,
roll.
I like all kinds of documentaries. To be honest, the older I've gotten, I'm interested in and I don't want to single out one. I just want to use that as a documentary.
That works. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of I like watching something that I know is real.
Hmm.
Not yeah.
When
I
you
like
say when
fighting.
you're looking at that though, are you more like a genre of documentary? Are you like my wife is huge into like murder mystery documentary type stuff, like serial killer. She loves the serial killer ones. I don't know why,
Yeah.
um, but I love the sports ones lately. Those have been like
Mhm.
real cool, like the Tom Brady one and the Kobe Bryant one, and now the Magic Johnson one. Those ones I love. So I'm curious, what genre would you put for your favorite
Yeah,
of?
I'm not a big murder mystery guy, but I watched that Magic Johnson one. That was cool. I watched one on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar recently that was pretty good.
Oh, I'll have to
I
watch that.
Yeah, it was a good one. I just watched a Tony Hawk one that was cool. Things that I'm into. I like the sports ones. I'm watching this one right now about this. It's called The Invisible Pilot. This guy who he was like faked his death and then abandoned his family for 15 years or some shit to become a
No
drug
way.
smuggler. He flew crop dusting planes and then he became a drug smuggler. It's pretty
No
interesting.
way. Like,
Yeah,
during, like, '80s or '90s, like, for,
that
like,
was in the 80s. Yeah,
Pablo? Oh my
uh,
gosh, for, like, Pablo Escobar is just, like,
exactly,
flying.
exactly.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah,
I'll have to watch that one. That's
yeah.
cool.
So things like that. I like funny movies. I like movies with Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, like that kind of stupid kind of funniness.
Mhm.
I guess having kids the last, my oldest is 25, so having kids, and watching movies with them, as long as it wasn't a cartoon or Barney, I was like, God, anything's better. Anything's better than that. So I watched a lot of cool movies that I probably wouldn't have watched, um, you know, without having kids. Um, I loved as a kid. I loved watching like all the Bad News Bears movies. Being a
Oh,
baseball
yeah.
kid, I love those. Those always had a soft spot for me.
I should have
Um,
worn my Sandlot hat. That's one of my favorite. I've got the Sandlot hat with
that's
Hercules on
another
it.
that's another good one. There's so many. But yeah, I'm God. I really couldn't pick three movies other than like,
It is tough, right? Like, that's why I always
God, yeah,
like asking it, 'cause it typically leads to conversations like this where it's like, "Oh, man, here's why I love this type or this movie," and it's like, "But I love all these other ones that fit in that same type of realm," and
I know this. I know that if I watch a movie for a 2-hour movie on Netflix, I spent 3 hours fumbling through the 30,000 movies available before I settled on one. You know?
Yeah. Oh, and it's even worse with, like, TV series because some of them are actually really, really engaging, and then you're committing to so much time. You're like, "Oh my gosh, this is
See, I
crazy."
got if I do those, I gotta watch the ones that are already completed because I can't wait till next week for another episode. I gotta like binge watch them for 3 days and be done. And
Yeah.
that's kind of my style.
Do you watch any, like, the Marvel ones? Because when you were talking about that, I thought of Moon Knight, which is the most recent one I watched, and I was like, I forgot how much I dislike these weekly releases. Like, when I was a kid, that was all it was, but then,
Yeah,
Netflix started spoiling us with the whole season or the whole series. I'm like, "This is how it should be," and then
yeah,
I got back to the weekly, and I'm like, "Man, this is tough to do this."
yeah. I haven't watched that one, no, but I feel exactly the same way as you do.
Yeah, you should watch.
Yeah.
It was actually pretty cool. I don't know if you like the Marvel movies or not, but I enjoyed
I'll
it.
check it out. I mean, I got a long plane ride ahead of me, so I got to download something.
Yeah, I think it's only like 6 episodes, so that's about a plane ride's worth. You'd be good.
Might get me there.
Oh, yeah, I guess you're going all the way to Europe, so yeah,
Yeah,
you may have to download a little extra.
need like 12 hours of movies.
Oh, yeah, that's,
I do
I think
plan to get
Moon
a little
Knight.
sleeping in though too, though.
Yeah, so you'll get maybe 5.5 hours out of Moon Knight, so, All right, last one here for you. I'm going to cheat my question a little bit because usually it's just favorite non-music related hobby, but, actually, maybe baseball's not in there anymore. So, for you, what's your favorite non-music related hobby? Something you love doing that has nothing to do with music?
Well, I've always, been pretty active and worked out, whether it be mountain biking or skateboarding or something, I've always that's kind of been my thing. I don't know if that's really considered a hobby or a
Oh,
sport.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's what I do. Um, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, most of my time is probably consumed with music. So like
Yeah,
that is probably what it would be. And
yeah. That's why I like that question because it's usually, most people are like, "I don't really do anything else."
yeah, it's true. Sad,
And
but
I did read you own, a skate park, is that right?
I owned an indoor skate park for 21 years. Yeah, we had to close in 2018 or 2019. But it was a lot of fun. It was always a passion of mine, and it was kind of my way of giving back to the community. And we tried to keep the prices down as long as we could. And then when we first opened in the mid '90s, it was kind of a rare thing. And then over the
Mhm,
course of the next 10, 15 years, all the public parks started opening, all the free parks. And I
mhm.
mean, that would have been a dream to do something for free, but unfortunately, we had to pay the rent too. So
Yeah,
um, you know, attendance kind of started to decline, and it just kind of ran its course.
yeah,
But it
yeah.
was a lot. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
thank Tony Hawk for that, because he's been
absolutely.
pushing the public ones lately,
Yeah,
which is
he,
awesome because
he
get more kids
supported
on
us.
skateboards.
He supported us as well, but
Yeah.
not necessarily financially, but and if it wasn't for, we could always tell when a new PlayStation game, when the would come out because our attendance would rise for like the next couple of weeks.
Mhm.
Kids were into it, so.
Yeah, I love that. I
But
mean,
that was a big that's something that I'm kind of proud of, is to do something on my own like that and bring it to the town that, I grew up in that didn't have that when I was a kid. So I know that helped out a lot of kids and kept a lot of kids out of trouble and also
Mhm.
helped a lot of kids. We spit out quite a few pro skaters, which was really cool.
That's
So
way cool. Which
yeah.
who are some of the pro skaters that went through there?
There's Tori Pudwell.
Okay.
One, he's got a company now called Grizzly,
Oh, I know
and
Grizzly, yeah, the grip tapes.
yeah, exactly. And there's another kid, Mike Capaldi, who local kid that
Oh, I know he's good. He's real
yeah,
good.
call
He's
him
fun to
Mike
watch.
Lowe. Yeah, and then just all the skaters, being in the LA so-called area that would come and we would get to meet and watch them skate and hang out and just watch them have a good time and appreciate what we had and then the kids that we taught, like the younger kids that we gave lessons on the weekends to and seeing them come back the next week all excited, and then 2 months from now they'd be able to do stuff that they couldn't do, couldn't even stand up on a board. And
Yeah,
so it was a cool it was a really cool experience to be able to see that over a couple of decades and actually see kids that were there in the beginning come back with their kids 20
that's
years later.
so cool, man.
That was really cool.
That is so epic. Oh,
Yeah.
man. Honestly, like, you should be super stoked on all the things that you've done, and it was an absolute pleasure being able to meet you and talk with you, and, really excited. I love the new album, obviously, but, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and it was my pleasure. And I'm glad you like the new music.
Absolutely. Have an awesome evening, and, have a safe travels as well. Enjoy the tour out there, and hopefully all goes great.
Thank you.
Alright, have a good one.
You too, man.
Awesome. How freaking cool is that? Get to freaking talk to Brian. Man, that was awesome. Pulley's such a great band. If you haven't listened to them, go check them out because they're freaking awesome. I grew up listening to them. I think I discovered them probably when I was 14. My sister had showed me a little bit of stuff, and they were one of those bands that just kind of they stuck. They were very much MXPX, and they were in that realm for me where it was more of the less skate punk, more just kind of punk. And so is that's awesome. Anyway, thank you for checking out this one. Catch you next time. Deuces.